Next, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Eric Garr. He's Director of the Eastern Region for Google Fiber, and he'll be speaking on meeting the infrastructure needs of the smart city. Before he does that, Eric's role is to represent Google in the fiber business in areas like the Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Atlanta, Nashville, Huntsville, and Louisville, the ones that I'm aware of. He was also served on the Federal Communications Commission and was the general manager or GM of the National Broadband Plan that was presented to Congress in 2010, which also received some significant accolades at the time from the White House. So he has a very distinguished background. He has a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Michigan, a master's in public policy from the University of Chicago. He's also a visiting professor at the Sanford School of Public Policy at Duke University. And Eric and his wife and two daughters reside in Durham. So a warm welcome for Eric Garr.
Hello, good morning. My name's Eric. That was a very fancy and nice introduction. I wear a lot of hats at Google. I actually have an airport code hat for each of the markets that I'm responsible for so that I can make sure I know where I am in my travels. Today I'm here in Raleigh, Durham, so I have my RDU hat on. I also live here, so even though I love all the markets that I worry about, I live in one, and I'm really happy to be here today. I did move here 4 years ago with my family, kids, dogs, guinea pigs, fish, the whole bit. Been here 4 years, and so I've gotten to know this place a little bit. And I think I'm kind of excited about this topic because I feel very welcomed into this community, which I think is a pretty remarkable place, whether we call it a smart city or not. I think others will decide what that means, but it's a pretty great place. Couple thank yous before I get started. Thanks to Mayor McFarland and Chancellor Woodson for the opening remarks. You know, I think one of the reasons we have a great community is we've historically, it seems to me, had really great leaders. And I think those are two great examples. I also wanted to thank the various City of Raleigh employees that I chatted with over coffee this morning and that I see in the audience. I saw Darnell Smith and Paul Kellum. I haven't seen Noah Otto. I see lots of Brandon I see over there. I think that one of the things that I felt very strongly when I came here was very welcomed by those folks. We're really glad and very fortunate to have such a great city staff, and they do lots of great things for the community. So thanks to all of you. You know, at Google, we love a good university town. Most people know that our company was founded in the shadow of Stanford University. So I think I'd also like to recognize NC State. It is not deliberate, but somewhat ironic that my RDU hat is red, which means a lot of things here. But I think the work that NC State does to foster innovation in this community is really, really great stuff, and it's always great to learn more about it. So headline for what I'd like to say is, you know, to me, if we're trying to create a smart city, Raleigh-Durham's probably well on its way. And I'll get into a little bit more about what role infrastructure plays in that creation of a smart city. I really wanted to make, so they gave me this. We're going to see if this works. It was funny, they handed it to me, and they, whoop. Let's see. All right, we'll start there. So they gave this to me when the prior speaker was speaking, and they said it worked, which was really a mistake, because I could have totally like flipped through their slides, but I didn't do that. It was really good to not do that. But I don't think the folks in back realized the risk they were taking by handing me this device. So I want to make 3 points. First, I want to describe what a broadband network is, kind of in plain English. I think often the commercial speech around this technology kind of makes it hard to see what it actually is. Second thing I want to do is talk a little bit about what a vibrant broadband ecosystem would look like, and then I'll make a few comments on kind of what we've been up to around here. So what the heck is broadband? In many ways, this is one of the most misunderstood phrases of our time. You can read lots of things about gigs and Gs and fiber and DOCSIS and megabits and seconds and bundles and bytes. Too often the commercial speech kind of gets in the way. More and more, the way we think about broadband is it's really about two things. It's about fiber and a radio. At the end of the day, those are the two devices that deliver bits to people that live in a smart city. So let's talk about each one for a second. So what's fiber? You know, fiber has been around for a while. Fiber optics actually started in the medical community by doctors in the 50s who were experimenting with arthroscopic techniques. And so they used glass and light reflected in glass to try to see inside of us to do the work that they were doing. A bunch of science happened, a bunch of Nobel Prizes were awarded. I think in particular 2009, Charles Cow, William Boyle, and George Smith were given the award for a bunch of discoveries they had made at Bell Labs and elsewhere, which really led to these things called fiber optic cables, which are these little pieces of glass surrounded by a casing where we can flash light in and out and basically transmit information. Now, the best thing about fiber is the quality and the speed of the signal that you can send. Light is kind of the fastest thing we know about. I suspect it would take more Nobel Prizes to have a thing faster than light. But if you kind of, in the known world today, you can't get much faster than light. And really that's what allows these fiber cables to kind of do incredible information transfer. In many ways, the fiber optic cables are kind of the capillaries of the smart city, and they carry information from, you know, Cary to Chapel Hill or from Raleigh to Reykjavik or wherever it needs to go. But it's not just fiber. Most people, when they interact with the internet, and I see many of you have your phones out here, so many of you are probably already interacting with the internet, it's through radio wave. So that radio wave might go from a cell tower to your cell phone. If you're out in the world, it might go from a Wi-Fi transmitter to your phone via a Wi-Fi signal. But at the end of the day, it's a radio wave. And this is another thing that's actually been around for a while. In fact, in 1909, Guillermo Marconi and Carl Braun won a Nobel Prize. I had no idea how far back Nobel Prizes went. Apparently 1909, there were Nobel Prizes. And they won a Nobel Prize for something which I think is kind of funny now. It was called wireless telegraphy. And the early radio waves were probably done because they couldn't get a permit for a wire for a telegraph. So they essentially were trying to invent ways to transmit information that they used to do on a copper wire for a telegraph, but they would do it wirelessly. So Marconi and Braun and many other scientists spent time studying radio waves. Eventually, they sent a signal a few kilometers. They eventually sent a signal across the North Sea and eventually across the North Atlantic. And that technology is really what we use. At Google Fiber, we're pretty convinced that for home use, the best thing we could do is put a fiber to your house and then put a low power but high quality Wi-Fi antenna in your home or transmitter into your home. We think that that's really the experience that people tend to resonate with. When you do that properly, your home is kind of bathed in bits. And you have sort of the ability to access the internet from anywhere in your home, on your porch, whatever. Mobile networks are really no different. There's still a fiber and a radio. There's a fiber to a tower, and on that tower is a cellular transmitter. That transmitter is different than the one we put in your house, but it's still kind of the same thing. It's sending bits to you over a radio wave. Every new G, there's been 2G, there was 2.5G, there's 3G, there's 4G, we're going to have 5G. This is just new versions of these transmitters, which do get better, better every day. And to me, if you want to be a smart city, you kind of need both. Now, we could all have arguments about which one is better, but it really depends on the use case. And I think if you're a smart city, what you want is lots of fiber in lots of places, and then you want these radios in places, respecting the local aesthetics and the places where we might want them and not want them. So that's what it is. And I think that When you peel away all the commercial speech, that's sort of what a smart city needs, is an infrastructure that just delivers bits all over the place. And that really allows lots of other great things to happen. Which leads to my second point, which is kind of why should we care about this as a smart city? There are two numbers that I'll come back to that are important for why we should care about this. And this is 17 megabits per second and $146.12. So put that aside, we'll come back to those in a minute. They'll become very important in a moment. But if you think about what broadband means to a smart city, the infrastructure is sort of secondary. It kind of starts with the people. An Englishman not named Sir Walter Raleigh once said, "What is the city but the people?" And I think that that's the kind of most important point. If you really think about what a smart city is, it's about a place that has lots of opportunities for health, welfare, education, community engagement, all of those things. And having lived here for a while, I feel like we always should want to do better, and we should always try to improve this community. But as someone who's lived a lot of places, we're doing pretty well here, and we should feel pretty good about that. What broadband does is it really amplifies this power by connecting each of us to each other. Collaboration, to me, remains the best thing we can do to accelerate progress, proving out the often heard quote that everybody is smarter than anybody. So I think when you have a community that has all sorts of opportunities for health, education, welfare, community engagement, et cetera, when you put amazing network infrastructure in the middle of it, you get kind of this accelerating effect. But it really starts with the people. Now, how do we get that? Well, as mentioned, I spent a little bit of time at the FCC. It was really an amazing experience. I was at the FCC at a time when some of the most important policy issues regarding the internet were being hotly debated. And so I was a participant in a lot of that. And I used to kind of leave all these debates with one kind of consistent thought. And that was that for the internet to be super fast, affordable, and widespread in America, what we really needed was more competition. That's really the thing that we needed. There's lots of things to do in terms of regulatory structures and all that, and that's all good stuff. But at the end of the day, most households in America really only have one or two providers to choose from. One of the big things that we wanted to incent at the FCC was more competition. I was really encouraged when Google decided to demonstrate that a third provider could be viable when they entered Kansas City in 2013. We've launched in a bunch of other cities, and we're very pleased to be that competitor so that consumers do have more choice. So that brings me back to kind of the two numbers. So when I first moved here, I looked at average speeds of the internet in all the cities in the Southeast, and I looked on Ookla data, for those of you, a lot of data people in the crowd. We can have a long debate about what's the best way to measure a network. Let's put that aside. When I looked at the Ookla data, the average speed in Raleigh-Durham in probably 2014 was about 17 megabits per second. And when I moved here, my first internet bill, which was for 2 DSL lines at about 10 megabits each, was $146.12 a month. And because I could only get that much capacity, I also had a satellite subscription for video content, which was another kind of 3-figure bill. That's not the case any longer. There are many, many more offers in the marketplace from us and from others that creates just a ton more choice for consumers here in Raleigh-Durham. And in fact, you can kind of see the results of that competition. So if you look today, and you look at Ookla again, which, again, we could all debate Ookla versus other things. Ookla developed a metric called a speed score. And this is data they published a year ago, so this is not particularly news today. But if you've never looked at this, you can really see the results of vibrant competition. And I think seeing Raleigh and Durham in the top 10 from a speed score standpoint is pretty cool. There's still much work to be done. We will continue to build our network. I know our competitors will too. And at the end of the day, it's that vibrant competition is what a smart city really wants. And if you have that, we'll have more bits in lots of places, in lots of ways, and that will enable a lot of the things that the prior presentation talked about. All those programs ultimately rely on bit delivery of some fashion, and great competition to me is a way to really get great bit delivery. So what have we been up to? We've been up to a few things. We continue to make good progress building out our fiber network here. We've worked really closely with several of the folks I mentioned earlier to try to reduce the disruption of installing fiber networks. It's still disruptive. There's no way for construction not to be disruptive, but we're really pleased at the progress we've made there. We've also kind of been very pleased at focusing on customer service. So what's great about competition is if you have to compete for those customers, you got to get really good at customer service. So we won a couple Stevie Awards, which is an award given for sales and customer service, and Consumer Reports has ranked us pretty highly as an ISP, two things that we're quite proud of. So now to all of you, to just kind of end on a couple of points here. If you're a local leader, what can you do? I would propose just a couple of things. The first one, and I think we do this well here, is support competition. Really work hard as a city to make it kind of efficient to build networks. That way, customers get more choice, and then the companies that provide the service are competing for those end customers. That's a really important function. And again, special thanks to all the city employees here in Raleigh, who I think do a really good job of making that a fair situation where we can all get permits and do the construction work we need to do to then serve customers. Don't underestimate how much work that is. So when you go into the planning department or the building department of your municipality, thank them. It's hard work, and it's really, really important. So I'd leave with just a final thought. The term smart city, I think, is one of those, it's maybe at peak hype cycle, different terms come along. I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that what's really most important about any community are the people that are in it and the opportunities for health, education, community engagement, et cetera, et cetera. I think that as a community, we have to focus on those things. And then when we layer in an amazing network, all that stuff just gets better. But it's really about the people and their lives, less a little bit about the technology. I've often felt, as one in the bit delivery business, the bits come from elsewhere. The bits come from a municipality trying to improve water use, or they come from citizens trying to plan a community event. Those are all activities that exist outside of the network. Our role is really to just enhance that. And as I mentioned, the best way to do that is great competition, which I think we enjoy here very much in Raleigh-Durham. So thanks for having me, and it's great to be in the city I actually live in today. So thanks.